Welcome back to the Sports Complex on a Tuesday afternoon. I'm your host, Patrick Davis. On the show today, we'll get into some NFL news. Mike McCarthy spoke to the media yesterday. They didn't give us any audio of it, but I have some quotes from me. We'll pull out a little bit. Dan Orlovsky talking about C.J. Stroud, a little bit of other news from around the NFL, and of course, we'll talk some Jonathan Taylor in the Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the day. Some NBA news. We haven't talked a lot of NBA. A couple things to clean up there in the NBA. Some clips from me and Rob B. We'll throw in there as well. And we're going to talk Sark talk to the media on Monday. We have some more clips of him talking about the defense. We talked about the offense yesterday. We're going to talk a lot more about the defense today, as well as a little MLB talk and last call right here on the Sports Complex. Remember, you can join the conversation always on the Specs text line, 512-337-3776. 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line number to join the conversation. And join the conversation right here on the Sports Complex. Let's get into, well, first, before we even get into the NFL news, I know one of the things coming out today is getting a lot of conversation is the Swamp Kings documentary being released. Swamp Kings is now out on, on Netflix, and it's the documentary looking at the Urban Meyer, Tim Tebow years of Florida. It's a 4-part documentary, and I kind of want to watch it, and I wanted to watch it a lot more before I've heard the reviews of it, before I saw, some quotes from the people who put it together. This seems to me that is going to fall into the same camp as that Johnny Manziel documentary, and what so many entitled documentaries are now, which is something where a person wants to make something and they want to make something more than they want to get a story. So they don't necessarily care about, hey, let's put together this thing and find the best pieces. This isn't a 4-part documentary. If we do 4 parts, we really kind of got to gas up the Florida football program a lot more. We got to get, the interviews we need to get. We have to give guys puff pieces kind of to get the interviews from Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow. And we're not really going to get any dirt. We're not going to get there will be some, but 4 pieces of it. It was okay during COVID. You could do it with Michael Jordan. You could have a 10-part documentary because it was during COVID. No one had anything else going on. There was nothing new coming out. We had nothing else to do. So it was fine with a overlong. You probably could have done Last Dance in 5. But yeah, I was fine. It's fine. You could do enough. I don't want to waste this much time watching a puff piece for Florida programming, for Florida football. I don't want to watch it. So I may try and watch some of it, but the early reviews that I have read are that basically the people that went into this documentary to make it didn't know didn't know enough about football, didn't know enough about what all the storylines and everything going on. They just knew, hey man, everybody keeps talking about this Florida program, that they won a bunch, but they were kind of salacious. And I don't think they knew that Urban Meyer, I'm not an Urban Meyer fan, and I don't want to say he's a deplorable human being, but I will say he's a human being that has allegedly done some deplorable things. That there's a lot of stories about him doing some bad things. And you can believe what you want to believe out of it. We know he's left multiple programs and then said that it was because of health issues, and then was signed somewhere else a little bit later, leaving programs and recruits and everything else, just leaving them in the dust and moving on. We know he's done that, but a lot of coaches have done that. So it's hard to put him up and get too mad about that. The health issue thing is annoying because why would you keep saying that? But we know what he did when he went to Miami, and that was a complete terrible – Jacksonville, sorry. When he went to Jacksonville, and it was a terrible, I was thinking of Nick Saban going to Miami and failing. But Urban Meyer goes there. We know that there was rumors of him coming to Texas when he allegedly has beef with Tom Herman. And some people will tell you that that's the reason Tom Herman people started to want to get him out, because they wanted to bring in Urban Meyer. And as soon as Tom Herman was out, he no longer had any interest in the Texas job, said he wasn't going to coach anymore. And then a few weeks later is coaching in Jacksonville. Just a lot of things, and that's not the half of it. When you hear what's actually going on in that Florida program, but they do a 4-part series, you probably could have done it in 2, maybe 1, and really just gotten down to it. So I'm gonna try to watch it. I'm gonna try and watch Swamp Kings documentary that came out, but I do not have high hopes for documentaries at all anymore. And this is, like, I'm a wrestling fan. And wrestling was the king of the made-up documentaries. They were the king of, you can make a documentary, say whatever you wanted to say, because everything was kind of, made up anyway. So there is some truth, but we're already creating characters, so the documentary is talking about a character anyway, and so we can blur the lines between the character and the person enough. And the perfect example of this was Ultimate Warrior, that they got mad at Ultimate Warrior. They wanted nothing to do with him. He didn't want to sign a contract with them, and so they made a documentary, the WWE did, the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. And the whole documentary is people bad-mouthing him and talking about how he ruined his career and he ruined everything and what a terrible person he was. And we got him over. We got him over. He was talented. We could get him over, but he ruined his own life. And then he went back to the WWE. They reached a deal, and once they could make money off him again, they hid that one. They took it away. And then a new documentary came out saying about what a great guy Ultimate Warrior was. And they were using same interviews that they had used before. And they just took different parts of the interviews and could make it. And that's how documentaries, that was how WWE used to make a lot of documentaries. But other people would make documentaries. There's 2 Tim Donaghy documentaries. One of them is actually pretty good. The other one is a Tim Donaghy puff piece. So documentaries as a whole now, I take everything with a grain of salt now because you have to, and you have to do your own research. But I'm not that excited for Swamp Kings. When the first reports came out about it, I was so excited for it, and everything since has made it. So I'm going to try and watch some for you guys. I'm going to try and see if anybody else has seen it. Let me know what you think on the Specs text line. But I've not seen anything to lead me to believe that it's going to be a good 4-part series and a good use of my time. But enough about that. Let's get into some NFL news. And we will get into the Dallas Cowboys first. We got a little bit of Cowboys, a little bit of Texans, and then some stuff from around the league. Mike McCarthy did speak to the media yesterday. We don't have audio from a lot of this. We may have some audio for tomorrow. I know Mike McCarthy might be speaking to the media again. I know that Jerry Jones is speaking to the media, I believe, as we're talking right now. So we'll try and get some of that audio for you tomorrow. But Mike McCarthy had some things to say, and just kind of updates on some of these players when you're trying to put together what this Cowboys team is going to look like this season, who's going to get playing time, who is going to be stepping up. One of the people you look at is that first-round pick, Mazi Smith. Because we know DeMarvion Overshown, before the injury, looked to be the best rookie that they drafted. Deuce Vaughn looked really good week 1, not as good week 2. So there are some other rookies that may get some playing time. But Mazi Smith was somebody that you thought, man, if this guy can step up with that Dan Quinn defense could become something really, really special. And, if you now add an impact player, because Hankins, who they re-signed, is a good player. I don't know if he's an impact player. So he can do a lot of good things, but I don't know if he's going to be able to really step you up and take your game to the next level. He's not going to eat up more defenders than any other defensive tackle that's playing at a starting NFL level. Cowboys coach Mike McCarthy on rookie defensive tackle Mazi Smith. You look at the way he graded out there were some plays that he'll definitely learn from. You got to remember he's still a first-year player. I think when you look at his overall camp, I think he's had a good to solid camp. This week will be another opportunity for him. He's like all the rookies. He needs to play. He needs time on task, and I would definitely put him in that category. So when we hear Mike McCarthy talk about some other rookies and some other players in camp and how he's really excited for what they do, this doesn't sound like he's too excited. This seems like Mazi Smith missed some time due to the tendonitis in his knees, and he's maybe a little bit behind schedule. I think that they also knew drafting Mazi Smith, they wanted to have Hankins in there anyway. I think this was something that was not out of the realm of possibility. They believe his future impact is going to be much greater. But for a position where you were hoping for a first-round pick on a defensive tackle, you were kind of hoping he could have an impact his rookie season. Maybe late in the season, but it does not appear early on Mazi Smith is going to have too much of an impact on this Dallas Cowboys defense. On the other side of the ball, we go into the running back game. And wondering, as they start to make cuts, and I'll give you a quote from Stephen Jones here to put into perspective why we have to look at the running back. Stephen Jones said today they were at an opening for a Miller Lite section at the Cowboys Stadium at AT&T Stadium. So he had to say about cuts coming up after week 3 of preseason. I think it's as deep a team as we've ever had. There's no question it's going to be the hardest 53 cut we've had in years. Is there a greater chance than usual of possibly trading a player before roster cuts? Someone asked Jones. He said, I don't think so. I think we've got our answers on this team. And he added they have some safeties that can help out at linebacker to kind of make up for what Overshawn was doing for them in preseason. But he's like, this is going to be a very hard season for us to cut. We're probably not going to – we don't have anybody that's a massive trade value, so we probably won't be able to trade anybody off before. We'd like to try and keep some of these guys on our practice squad, but it's going to be tough. And at running back, I think that is one of your toughest decisions of who you keep on this roster, because there is right now Tony Pollard, who we've not seen play yet, but that is your starter. You drafted Deuce Vaughn. It does not seem like you were going to draft him and not keep him on the roster. You can use him in special teams as a return guy, wherever else you want to use him. I think you keep Deuce Vaughn on the roster. I don't know if you keep 4 running backs in today's NFL, especially if 2 of them are not going to be able to play much. So you're taking up 2 roster spots, and you're talking about 53-man cuts is hard. You may have to cut 2 of these running backs because you still have a Ronald Jones who's suspended 2 weeks, has not played in this preseason. And Mike McCarthy said of Ronald Jones will be challenged. Ronald Jones is going to be challenged this week to play. He has not played in this preseason. They want him to play in this one preseason game to show anything, to show a reason why they should keep Ronald Jones on this roster. I don't see any chance he's on this roster as of right now. It seems crazy to me to keep him on the roster, considering the fact that he wasn't doing – I don't know who else is going to sign him. Kareem Hunt still doesn't have a team. I don't know who's looking out there for Ronald Jones saying, well, he couldn't stay on the field in Tampa Bay and he couldn't get on the field in Kansas City. I don't know who's looking out for him, but I don't see him making that cut. And so then it comes down to, if you're going to not put Luepke there as kind of a fullback, you have to go into Rico Dowdle or Malik Davis. Which one of those gets cut? Cowboys Mike McCarthy had to say on Rico Dowdle, I've been impressed with Rico since my first year. I love his running style. He runs angry. He pass protects with a lot of urgency. He sticks his nose in there. I think we're just getting to see Rico finally healthy. So we know now that Mike McCarthy is a fan of Rico Dowdle, and he hasn't said the same kind of things about Malik Davis. We've heard this multiple times about Rico Dowdle, that he seems to be the guy that Mike McCarthy is favoriting. That doesn't mean that the Joneses are, that Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones are favoring him. But if I'm watching one thing in this preseason game this week, especially if Ronald Jones plays, I want to see how those running backs, which one of them really, really tries to go out there and does not let somebody take him down, plays the extra, blocks on every single play. Because I just cannot see, out of the 4 running backs behind Tony Pollard, them keeping 3 of them on a roster. And even with that, you still got to let somebody go that we weren't expecting to have let go. One other point we'll make, he talked about Jalen Tolbert. Jalen Tolbert is becoming that place where Noah Brown kind of was at last year, where they're hoping, and I think a lot of this is just hope as well for the Cowboys, that they want to put Jalen Tolbert into a position that will give him the confidence to succeed, because they know this is a make it or break it year, and they may be, depending on where Michael Gallup is and how he plays, this may be a season of, they might have to move on from Michael Gallup, or if you're going to try and keep Brandon Cooks, then Gallup, if he's not playing at the level where you think he can ever be a number 2, you may not want him for that number anymore. And so if you can get a Tolbert for less, all those things become part of it. Mike McCarthy said yesterday, when asked about Jalen Tolbert, he said, the confidence just number 1. It just jumps off the field. I think that's really attributed to his hard work. He's had a heck of an offseason. He's cashing in on opportunities. He's going up and making plays. I like the instinct of the plays, the scramble plays, the extended plays. So I just think it shows you how much he's grown. He's on the same page as the quarterbacks, so I thought he had a nice night. And this is something for a Mike McCarthy offense that I've seen a little bit of glimpses in the preseason, and we don't know how much of the play calling we're seeing in preseason that is going to stick like the preseason or get to regular season. But something that he didn't necessarily do a ton of in Green Bay, he did a little bit of, and then Matt LaFleur picked up on, and I think this may be factored in a little bit into the Mike McCarthy system. Mike McCarthy is a big fan of running backs running really good routes. So when he says the scramble plays and those things, that's not normally a Mike McCarthy offense. Mike McCarthy wants you to run really good routes and be where you're supposed to be, and he likes to get players in space. One of the pieces about doing that is trying to run some rub routes, which rub routes is the nice way offenses refer to them. Pick routes is how defenses refer to them because picking is illegal. But rub routes where you kind of just could put a guy and you're not necessarily setting a complete screen, but you're coming across usually on a slant route or a crossing route and being able to bounce off a guy who may be going deep or maybe on a curl route and getting a little bit more separation. And for what you would want out of a Jalen Tolbert is somebody who has the confidence to pull off a rub route without making it look like he's going to set a screen. So being able to run a route with precision, being able to look at a quarterback and go, but also know where he's supposed to be on this field to at least make a defensive back move slightly off. And if you're trying to run an offense that's relying on everyone taking the right amount of steps and everyone knowing where they're supposed to be at and not having to have to look up, because once you look up and you're trying to make the play, it becomes a lot more obvious you're running a rub route. So you have to kind of try and keep your eye on the quarterback, make your move, keep your head down. You have to do everything to not let the referee feel like you are intentionally trying to pick off another defensive back. And that is where you need the confidence to not look like a deer in the headlights out on the field. That is something that I think if Jalen Tolbert picks up, he will see a lot more playing time. Maybe not receptions, but he'll see more playing time for the Cowboys if he can start picking up those kinds of small, nuanced things to open it up for some of the other wide receivers for the Cowboys. I think you'll see Jalen Tolbert get some more plays there. Moving over to the Houston Texans now. Dan Orlovsky was talking today about C.J. Stroud and his preseason outing, and something that you're starting to hear more and more about C.J. Stroud and about how the Texans are going to have to game plan around C.J. Stroud, that he is much more of an old school quarterback, at least right now in his career, that you are not getting a guy that a lot of young quarterbacks you are much more worried about. Is he going to pick up the ball and take off? C.J. Stroud throws the ball really well with his feet planted, and he has a lot of accuracy when he does it. Here's Dan Orlovsky on who he thinks that C.J. Stroud has some throws that look like. If you want some a little bit more, just a little Kool-Aid for C.J. Stroud to feel like maybe there's some hope that he's going to have a better season than it's looked like in his first two games, here's Dan Orlovsky today on C.J. Stroud.
His left, I think it's the Robert Woods. If you watch the ball and don't know who it came from, it looks like Joe Burrow. Just the pace of the football, how catchable it is. Also the ball that it goes to his right and like this is a really good slant. He reads it inside out. This is kind of that grouping of pass plays. This is a beautiful throw. Like if you didn't know this came from C.J. Stroud, you'd say like, oh, that looked like Joe Burrow throwing that. Just how catchable and easy it is for guys. It's effortless for him, and it's effortless for the other guys. I think the two things that I liked the most were he got pressured once, knew the hot and got it out, completed. And then there was another time he starts all the way to his left and comes all the way back to his right to number 4 in the progression and pins it on the back's chest. You remember New England game, he looked a little confused. Like, I got a lot. This game, it was like, oh, I know, I'm going through it like a typewriter.
Dan, this brings me back to your pre-draft tape. In your pre-draft tape, you talked about the way that he can efficiently locate the ball on all 3 levels. And that's a little bit of what we've seen. We haven't seen him push it down the field yet, which is something I believe that they'll get to. But watching him operate short to immediate last week was really who C.J. Stroud is. And I think that what you said about the ball being catchable is also a huge piece.
You know, like, it's 2 weeks, but you don't see receivers stretching forward a ton. You don't have to see them turning back to it. Like, those 2 balls are perfectly placed right here. That's easy for guys.
A lot of what I pay attention to, too, is y'all was talking about Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence and how that interaction was going on the sideline. When Trevor Lawrence was struggling, it was like, what are you doing? When you see C.J. walk off the field, they've handed him the keys to the franchise. D'Amico is always empowering them, telling them next play. Like, those things go a long way, too, with these guys' confidence when they trying to get better and know that this type of pressure is going to be on them.
And I think the player you kind of hinted him being is like that surgeon inside of 15 yards is what his career is going to be.
There you go. I think that C.J. Stroud there, when you hear those kind of points, with not having necessarily a true deep threat receiver right now. And, I don't know if Mechie could turn out to be that guy if they start to work that way. I don't know if Robert Woods could turn out to be that guy. I don't think Tank Dell is going to be that guy because at 5'9", it just becomes a little bit harder, even with speed, that you can put a defensive back, and it's just you really have to drop it in. And I don't know if he has that arch on his deep ball. But in the mid-range game, to open up until you get to the point where you start to put it over the top like that, just to get some first downs, just to take this season and allow yourself to be in games. Because for the Texans this season, it is much more about allowing yourself to not be blown out. Because if you're in games, you can win games. Now, how many are going to win? 20%, 30% maybe of those games that you're in. But if Dameon Pierce has a chance to break a big play and get us a touchdown. Our defense has a chance to make a game-saving play or a game-changing play and a turnover and a pick six, something like that, because you're in the game, because you're not having so many 3-and-outs in that mid-range game to at least move the ball down the field somewhat, to keep the possession in your hands instead of trying to take deep shots and turning the ball over. You have to learn a little bit more about watching for safeties poaching up when you don't have the deep ball threat as much. You have to watch about linebackers. That is just linebackers played at different speed in the NFL than college. But a guy like Tank Dell can be killer in those little mid-range, and if he's putting it where it needs to be, there is a hope that C.J. Stroud can get the Texans at least into some games. Not necessarily winning all of them this season. That's for the future. That's down the road. But he can have the Texans in the games, and that's where you're at for the Texans right now. You need to be in the games, not blown out, just in them. Over in Tampa Bay, news that no one was that surprised about. Neither one of them looked good. Baker Mayfield gets named the starter. Kyle Trask does not get the starting job. Not hugely surprising. Baker Mayfield has the reputation. He can the game will not be too fast for him. He can play in the game. You're in a division with Derek Carr, Desmond Ridder, a rookie Bryce Young, which we can probably say Bryce Young has the best potential to be the best player out of this division of quarterbacks, but he's a rookie and he's not playing. They trade away DJ Moore, so he doesn't have a lot of help. So you see why they did it, but this is also part of the NFC now. The NFC, once you lose Aaron Rodgers, that pick for quarterbacks in the NFC, man. I mean, your number one quarterback is Jalen Hurts now, I assume. One really good season with Jalen Hurts. That's your number one quarterback in the NFC. Does anybody have a better quarterback in the NFC than Jalen Hurts right now? I mean, do you put Matt Stafford there or Kirk Cousins? I know none of y'all are going to put Dak Prescott there. Baker Mayfield's he could be a top 5 quarterback in the NFC if he plays hard enough. If he plays well, he's got Chris Godwin there. He's got Mike Evans there. Baker Mayfield could be a top 5 NFC quarterback if that offense runs smoothly enough. That's a weird thing to say because he's got run out of Carolina. He's got, they didn't want to keep him in the Rams when Stafford was healthy. Cleveland wanted him out of there, but he still could be. If he's got good receivers now, you can't blame him for that. Finally, last thing we'll get to, I have another piece of audio we may play a little bit later in the show from Pete Carroll on the Richard Sherman podcast. It's just a fun old school, or fun from Super Bowl 49 in that play. He breaks it down, and it won't explain it anymore of why they did it because it's still, he shouldn't have done it, but it's a little bit more explained. But I'll play that in a little bit. Jonathan Taylor, the news came out yesterday that the Colts are allowing Jonathan Taylor to look for a trade. He is upset after everyone realized that running backs no longer have any value. He wanted to try and get a new contract. Jim Irsay said some dumb things about, well, if I die tomorrow and if you're and then running backs and you're no longer in the NFL, you get hurt, then none of us will be alive. And the NFL keeps going on. It was a weird thing that Jim Irsay said, and it's a weird thing to say when all you have to do is just pretend that you're going to pay him, just pretend that you're not going to screw him over in 9 months, which you are, but just pretend you're not. And he couldn't even do that. He had to open his mouth. So now Jonathan Taylor doesn't want to be there, doesn't want to play with Jim Irsay. So the Colts now have gone out and done the old NFL play. You can go seek a trade. You can go seek a trade. What do we want from you? At least a first-round pick. at least a first-round pick, if not a first, 4 or 5 picks. We want something big. We want a huge return for a guy that we do not feel is worth a $10 million contract. We don't want to pay him. We do not feel that running backs are worth this amount of money, but you should give us a first-round pick for him, is what the Colts are saying, which is the reality of the Colts don't want to trade him. They want to get their rookie contract. They want to get their rookie running back money, which is what everybody wants. You want to draft a rookie, have him play out his contract, say thank you for your service, or maybe franchise tag him for a year, and say thank you for your service, let him go his way, draft another running back, and do it again. That's what every NFL team, that's the mold, that's what you want to do. And Jonathan Taylor, if he wants to, he's only making like $5 million this year. So not only does Jonathan Taylor have to go out and try and find a trade partner who's willing to give up a first-round pick for a running back, which no one is, he then has to get them to pay him a long-term contract, which no one is going to do. The Cowboys' name has come up in this a few times. Jerry Jones has said today, like our running backs, they're not going to do it. They're not giving up a first-round pick. They're not going to give up all that. I think if Jonathan Taylor was coming at them for a 5th-round pick, they would be one of the more likely teams to wait until the next season and maybe offer him or Pollard a contract, depending on what Tony Pollard does. But I think with Tony Pollard in the situation they're in, they need a running back. They don't need to get another guy who wants to make double-digit money, double-digit millions next year, as is Tony Pollard. So the Cowboys don't make sense in the fact of how much money they're already spending. I know they do. If it would help them, they'd be a much better team with him. But to give up a first-round pick to hope it works out with Mike McCarthy as your offensive coordinator and head coach, and to hope that everything falls into place seems risky. It seems risky. But it does want to take me to today's Big Fat Poll of the Day.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the Day on the Horn.
So when you look at Jonathan Taylor and the trade value for Jonathan Taylor, which we know is not a first-round pick or a plethora of picks, it's not that. The poll today, you can join this the conversation. 512-337-3776. 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line. What upcoming free agent running back would you trade the most for? So out of the free agent running backs, if you were to say, hey, we got to get somebody, if you're Dallas, or if you're Dallas and Tony Pollard goes down, or you're the 49ers and Christian McCaffrey goes down, or you're whatever team that feels like you're going for it and you don't have a running back and you got to make a trade. And there is a list of good free running backs that will be a free agent at the end of this year. So this is somebody I can trade for, and they're going to want to get a contract, they're going to want to get an extension, or I'm going to have to tell them it's a rental for 1 year and then you go on your way. Here, I'm going to give you some names. Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, and Jonathan Taylor. All right now would be free agents next season. Now we know Jonathan Taylor will probably be franchise tagged. Austin Eckler may get franchise tagged. But will they show up? If they do, I don't know. But those guys may end up getting franchise tagged. Austin Eckler had to get a revised deal to even come back this season. But what upcoming free agent running back, if you wanted to make a trade for a free agent to be running back in the NFL, which one of those upcoming free agent running backs would you trade the most for? Now, the most you may trade is still a 3rd-round pick. But which one of these, knowing if you sign Josh Jacobs, you sign Jonathan Taylor, you got to pay him. You sign Derrick Henry, you probably don't have to pay him as much. Saquon Barkley got to pay, at least do a 1-year contract. That's what he's on now. Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor. There's other ones. DeAndre Swift is there, or Kenneth Walker is one. There's a lot of running backs that are going to be in this class. Another reason why the value is driven down and down. Let us know on the Specs text line. 512-337-3776 is how you join the conversation. We come back, a little bit of NBA news right here on the Horn. 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn on a Tuesday. And we're playing songs about waiting this week is our theme of the week for our music. And last week was about rain, and we did a rain dance all week. And finally, we got 10 to 15 minutes, depending on where you're at. We got a decent amount up here at the station. So I hope everybody got to enjoy a little bit of rain. I know that our waiting ends this weekend for football that actually matters. You get a Notre Dame game and a USC game this weekend. They're going to be blowouts, but do you get to see games that matter? Football, the starters playing, it's going to happen this weekend. We're just playing songs, waiting until we get there, and then waiting for the Rice game, and then really a lot of people waiting for that Alabama game. But we're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting there together. What's even further away is the NBA season. And so there hasn't been a lot of news since NBA kind of shut down and everybody went into their vacations. There hasn't been a ton. FIBA does start, I believe, Saturday morning is when you can watch the FIBA World Cup. The games that actually are part of the FIBA World Cup, you can watch those Saturday morning. All the games seem to be in morning games, so you can check them out there. But there was a little bit more news that came out on James Harden today and his saga that he is playing out in the media. And we know James Harden is one of the biggest divas in all professional sports. He has gotten his way in Houston. Kevin McHale came out and talked about how when he was mad at Kevin McHale, he was the head coach of the Rockets, and he didn't like what his play calling was, and he sat him down in a fourth quarter game. He came back the next season overweight and basically sandbagged it until Kevin McHale got fired and then started playing better, which a lot of people have accused him of sandbagging it and gaining weight and using his weight to control what he wants to do. But James Harden, if you have not kept up with the drama so far with the Philadelphia 76ers, James Harden opted into the last year of his contract. A lot of people thought that when he took a lesser amount of money to sign with the 76ers, that it was going to be a one-year contract. He was going to opt out and then try and get a max deal. That didn't happen. So then he opted into the contract and immediately requested a trade. That did not happen either. And so when he was doing a tour of Asia, this is what he had to say about Daryl Morey.
Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. Let me say that again. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of.
Let me say that again. That's the best part, is he said it once and then realized people were still pulling out their cameras to record. And so he said it again because he knew you got to go viral. I did a thing once years ago where I was wearing a president's mask. I won't say which one to not be political. And it was with a group of friends that were in a band. And I walked out and they were going to do this thing where I came out and then they were playing the presidential march and then they played gunshots and then I hit the ground and then they did a whole song while they're standing on top of me. We did this whole thing, and all of it was to try and go viral. And this is enough years ago that I was still a young man. I was like, oh, yeah, man, it'll be great. We'll go viral. And I had a mask on. No one was like I was. And we did it, and it was the one thing that nobody filmed. Not one person had it, and it was a complete waste of time and money to try and do. But that was what that's James Harden when he was trying to get people riled up, saying, I will never play for Daryl Morey again. So then he has to go back, and that didn't get enough of anybody's attention. So now he does an interview in Houston, and they ask him what his relationship is with the 76ers, and here's James Harden on that clip.
Do you have an open line of communication with the 76ers, and how much patience do you need to have to let this play out?
I'm been patient all summer, so for me, it's just focus on what I can control, and that's working out, staying in shape, and getting ready for a good season.
Too late to repair the relationship?
I think so.
So too late to repair the relationship is now what he has said. So he is not happy with Daryl Morey. And then the NBA and other teams start to freak out, and they go, wait a minute. If he's saying he's a liar and the relationships are beyond repair, did they make a under the deal table that he was going to re-sign him to a max deal, and then he backed out of that? Is that what happened? So the NBA launched an investigation, and it concludes, I don't know if it's fully concluded, but the biggest first piece taken out of it was that James Harden did not say, no, I'm not calling him a liar because he told me he was going to pay me a big contract and didn't. I didn't do that. It wasn't the Timberwolves with Joe Smith back when ruining the Kevin Garnett years of the Timberwolves. They got other problems in Minnesota. But it wasn't that. He says, when I talked to him about they weren't going to give me the right amount of money, but I still wanted to make some, Daryl Morey, my friend, basically told me, well, if you just opt in, you'll be able to make some money still, and we'll trade you. If you don't want to be here, we'll trade you. And I'm sure that Daryl Morey said in a way of, once we get into the season, if things aren't going the way you want, we'll trade you. And the way James Harden heard it was, if you opt in, we will trade you tomorrow to wherever you want to go. So this was what he ended up saying was the problem, which then forces the NBA to fine him, I believe, $100,000 to get mad at him because they're really trying to fight off the player empowerment era of the NBA, and they're trying to fight off players now demanding to not only be traded, but demanding to be traded to whatever team they want to go to, and they demand the provisions of the trade. They're trying to get out of that. And if you're wondering why the NBA now, after all these years, is starting to fight back on that, my best guess is expansion. Is that they want to expand most likely to Seattle and Las Vegas within the next 5 to 10 years and add 2 more expansion teams. And they know that once this happens, that those teams are going to take a little while to build, and rookies are going to go there, and they're going to play 3 or 4 years in a contract and say, this team is not building up fast enough, and I want to be a star, and I need to be traded, and I want to be traded here. Or players are going to sign there and go take their money and then realize that it's not what they wanted to be in, and they're going to want out. Or somebody's going to say, you know what, they have money now, and I can go over and play in Vegas where I'd rather play, so trade me to Vegas. And I think they know that these franchises and people buying into them are more worried about player empowerment when they're trying to sell 2 new owners to come in and spend a ton of money, and they need to get these billionaires. Some of these billionaires don't like the way that the NBA looks when players demand to be out of teams that don't necessarily spend a ton of money. And we know that some of these owners may not. Not everybody's Matt Ishbia who wants to throw his money around right out of the gate. He took advantage of it. That's one of the reasons he bought it, is because he was all for player empowerment. Come play for me, I'll come get you. So I think one of the major issues that the NBA is looking at is expansion. So they're trying to tamp down the Dame Lillard deal. They're trying to tamp down the James Harden deal. Both those will probably still happen. But the NBA is trying to make it seem as if there's a little bit more of a level playing field between GMs and players. Now, Daryl Morey has brought this upon himself. He has brought this upon himself completely because Daryl Morey is a guy who has never once cared about player chemistry. Not once. He doesn't care about anything but what you can do on the court. And so he has built team after team with a lot of talent, but not enough to put it all together. And that is the problem that Daryl Morey has in his teams. And as much as people want to say he's a genius, a lot of these trades he pulls off are because people don't want to work with the player that he is getting the better deal for. A lot of these deals are things where you get a James Harden and Oklahoma City says, sure, look, we're not getting much else for him. And we know what you're getting. He was here. We saw him pouting in the corner when people were talking to Russell Westbrook instead of him, and when people were talking to Kevin Durant instead of him, and we paid Serge Ibaka, we watched what he did and said, we prefer not to have Kevin Martin. That was probably a bad deal. But we're okay trading James Harden right now. And that was also, if you ever want to go back and look into the history of the big year of expansion in the salary cap for the NBA, and that that's an insane story for the Thunder, that if they would have realized they could have held on for another year, there wouldn't have been a luxury tax, and they could have paid all 3 guys to stay there and Serge Ibaka and probably had a really good team for several years to come. But because they didn't, that destroyed their franchise because they traded away James Harden, and then the Golden State Warriors were able to use the money from the new jump in the salary cap that basically let every single team have room for a max player, sign Kevin Durant away from them. It's a crazy story of miss luck and mistiming for the Oklahoma City Thunder. But going back to James Harden, that's how Daryl Morey can get a guy like that. How does he pull off a trade for Ben Simmons and James Harden? People know what the deal is. People know that you're getting a guy that even though he can play, you have a year of this and then something else. And you know what he's got now? He's got Joel Embiid, and he hasn't put enough people around him to be good role models, and he continued to put people around him that were looking out for themselves instead of looking out for the team. And now if you ask GMs and you ask media people who the next player is who's going to demand a trade, most people, if you say the front runner right now, it's Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid is the front runner to be the next player to demand a trade. And Philadelphia, after the whole process and everything that they went through, and then thinking, oh, no, it was the coach, Brett Brown, we got to get him out. And then get the GM out. And then you bring in Daryl Morey. And Daryl Morey comes into this team and gets him close. But they don't bring in glue. They bring in P.J. Tucker, but not a P.J. Tucker that you don't have enough pieces around P.J. Tucker. That was the best deal they made. And it ends up not ever coming together. You never brought in a mentor for Joel Embiid to help him take that next step, whether it's even a coach or anybody. We saw with Dwight Howard that Orlando tried to hire 3 or 4 former big men to come in and help Dwight Howard to be a mentor, to understand this is what it takes to be the best big man in the league. People get that. And Daryl Morey never went out of his way to make sure that this team could grow as people, and that is why this team is blowing up right now. And for James Harden, I think more fines are on the way because he is going to continue to do crazy things, and he may end up in Asia. He knows the money's there, and if he has to hold out of the NBA, he has to hold out to try and get what he wants. There's a chance that he will decide to take his ball and go home, or go to Asia and say, I'm going to make a bunch of money. I sold 10,000 bottles of my wine in 5 minutes. I'm going to go over there and be the best player in Asia for a while until I realize I don't like it there either. And then I'll come back and you'll put me in the Hall of Fame and everything will be great. But I'll go take a few $1 million over there too. And I get to prove my point that I'm the guy and I'll get to be the star. Dwight Howard's loving it over there. So it would not surprise me if James Harden, at least for part of next season, isn't in the NBA. It would not surprise me completely because he's that guy. He's been that locker room guy for years. And people thought that it was somebody else, and people have put it on everybody else's shoulders. It's James Harden. And it's Daryl Morey. And they are not good together because they both think that they're the smartest guy in the room, and they both think they're going to get their way. And it has finally come to a massive head. And if I'm Philadelphia, I'm getting rid of both of them. And I'm trying to move ahead because I don't have the same faith in Daryl Morey that a lot of people do. He makes some deals, but he has not come close to winning a ring other than the one Houston Rockets here where there's injuries and they say they're going to win it. I still don't think they do. But other than that, he's never really, like Philadelphia, he hasn't got them close. Not at all. Couple other things in the NBA before we go to break. Dame Lillard talk, still completely dead. Dallas Mavericks are the JaVale McGee experiment in Dallas where they took JaVale McGee instead of trying to trade for somebody else, and then they didn't want to include JaVale McGee in the DeAndre Ayton trade or whatever it was, or they wanted to put him in the DeAndre Ayton trade. He's getting waived. They're going to keep Markieff Morris. And a shout-out to Texas women's basketball. They have announced the UConn game at the Moody Center December 3rd is going to be on ABC. That is going to be awesome. I may have to go and buy a ticket for this as well. Now that I'm not working those games all the time, I may go buy myself a ticket. It is going to be a really fun atmosphere to see Texas women's basketball. I know Greg Popovich and R.C. Buford were with the team today, so that's cool. And I'm not always Vic Schaefer's biggest fan. There's some things he does in coaching that are not my style, but I got to give the guy credit. He is getting this program to another point. And so props to him for getting this team the exposure to be able to be on national television, have an ABC game December 3rd against UConn. Buy those tickets, Texas fans. Sell out that out. show that the University of Texas has the best fans. That is going to be an awesome game. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll get back to the Patrick's Big Fat Poll today. What upcoming free agent running back would you trade the most for? Some names: Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley, Austin Ekeler, Jonathan Taylor, among others, are all up there. 512-337-3776. 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line. Join the conversation there. We'll be right back with more here on the Sports Complex on the Horn, 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and at hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex on the Horn, playing some songs about waiting today. Playing them all week long. Waiting for some real football to start. I'm being very excited. We get real college football coming back this weekend, and we get Texas football, and next weekend, and then the weekend after that, we get some NFL football, and I'm very excited about all of that coming back to us. We've been asking you on the Specs text line to join the conversation. 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line. Join the conversation there. We've asked you about Patrick's Big Fat Poll today. What is upcoming free agent running back would you trade the most for? Because Jonathan Taylor, of course, has been given permission to seek a trade for the Colts. No one is going to give up a first-round pick or a plethora of picks for Jonathan Taylor. It's just not going to happen. Plus, give him a big contract. I think when they asked different GMs and executives from around the league, most people were saying at most you're going to get a third-round pick. Some people said maybe you get a second-round pick for him if he doesn't demand the biggest contract, and if he's willing to come play for you for a season for a second, and you can then franchise tag him or figure something out after the season. There's some more teams that figure a second maybe in there. But that's if he's willing to work with you. If he's not willing to work with you and he wants a 4-year, $60 million contract, he's going to get – there's very few teams. So we've got a couple people chiming in. Derrick Henry gets a few. Derrick Henry is an interesting one because Derrick Henry is the older running back, but you also feel that you may be able to keep Derrick Henry on a roster. If you give up, a third-round pick for Derrick Henry right now, you may be able to keep him on your roster on 1-year deals or on a 3-year, $15 million deal, $16 million that he just wants to guarantee money, and you bring in a hard back that you can run in a platoon with, I don't know, a Tony Pollard, and you could put that off. It's interesting because with Josh Jacobs, with Tony Pollard, with Saquon Barkley, with Austin Eckler, with Jonathan Taylor, all these guys want long-term deals. That's what they'd really prefer to have. Derrick Henry is the outlier of a back that still looked good, and he may not be able to play every down anymore. He may not be able to finish. He's probably going to miss some games throughout the season for you. But if you put him in a platoon, is he worth $5 to $6 million a year to be a really, really good back and give you that insurance of if you can get in the playoffs? Man, can you imagine having Tony Pollard, Deuce Vaughn, and Derrick Henry going to the playoffs if you're the Cowboys? Could you imagine that? And I don't know what the price. I'm sure that Tennessee wants a second or a first or something else for Derrick Henry, and I don't know what he's willing to sign for either. So you can't say that it's a perfect world and all those things will happen. But you can join the conversation, 512-337-3776. Anything you want to talk about, send it on the Specs text line there, and we'll come back. Second hour, Sports Complex, some sound from Sark from his press conference yesterday. We're going to talk about some defense here at Texas football, and they look better in the scrimmage than offense, so we can get into some positives about Texas defense and maybe a little bit of worries. We'll get into that coming back here on the Sports Complex in the Horn, 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and at hornfm.com. Back on hour 2 with the Sports Complex here on the Horn. We're going to get into some Sark audio talking about the defense, their performance from the scrimmage, and some standout players. All of that coming up, along with some MLB news. May play some Ian Rob B for you as well. And last call, join the conversation. 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line, how you can join the conversation with us right here on the Sports Complex. Let's get into some Sark audio. He talked to the media yesterday. They had the big scrimmage on Saturday. A lot of the reports coming out of that scrimmage involved some disdain for the offensive performance and really just a lack of focus on offense. There was, apparently too many pre-snap penalties, just some small focus things that then expounded into the defense taking advantage. And reports where the defense looked a lot better. So we focused on the offense yesterday here on the show. If you missed any of that, you can check it out on the podcast page at hornfm.com, wherever you get your podcasts from. But let's get into what Sark said about the defense in the scrimmage and the defense going forward this year, because for Texas this year, it's a big year for the defense. As much as for Sark's offense, it's a crucial year for Quinn Ewers to show up and Xavier Worthy to excel past what he did his freshman year and to find a running back, and JT Sanders to solidify himself as one of the best tight ends in Texas football history. All of those things are true for the offense, but without the defense, PK is on a trajectory to grow the defense and get it playing at a higher level. There's a lot of recruits, and you need that recruiting to continue as you get into the SEC. That defensive line play needs to keep improving. You need to keep recruiting at a very high level for this defense, because one down year could slow down momentum recruiting-wise. So it is a big year for defense as well, knowing that you're about to go into the SEC and your defensive play is going to have to keep improving year after year. Here's what Sark had to say yesterday about the defense in the scrimmage so we can build to where we're going.
As far as the scrimmage directly goes, I thought defensively they had a good scrimmage, and I think it started with their energy. I thought they brought really good positive energy for one another, and it showed. A lot of defense is about effort, it's about attitude, and then you got to play right. And I thought that they brought that. I thought our run defense was very stout. I thought the defense did a nice job in the red zone of getting stops in the red area at times, although maybe the ball moved down the field. They found a way to get stops and to force field goals, which was real positive. And I think a lot of that, the run game and red zone stops, started up front. I thought the line of scrimmage, our front seven is playing a really good brand of football right now. I was proud of them for that. And some of the guys that stood out up front, because I don't get to talk about everybody all the time. I thought T'Vondre Sweat probably had his best day Saturday. And when he plays like that, we're a lot better because he's very difficult to block. I thought Leona Lafau has really made a lot of strides from spring ball through the first 10 days or so of training camp, and had a really good scrimmage Saturday. I thought Ethan Burke had a really nice scrimmage, both edges kind of getting solidified now, and I feel really good about those first three guys with Sorrell, Justice, and Burke, and what those guys can do. I thought Gavin Holmes had a really good week, and the week turned out to he had a really good scrimmage, and so that was a positive. And then the two guys that have been mainstays up front that have been kind of solidifying their spots and what they're doing, obviously Alfred Collins and Byron Murphy again, and so that front is tough. They're big, they're physical, they're athletic. They're playing really well together, and I think a lot of that stems from Jalen, just his communication up there at the line of scrimmage and getting everybody tied together. So that was good.
Looking there in the scrimmage, that it seems that this defensive unit and Jalen Catalon, who mentions there at the end, is showing that he is bringing in a different level of awareness, and I think it's just coming from a different system of a team that now is so many guys from the same system that he's able to bring in a different look than some of these guys that have been brought in and taught everything that the transfer portal can bring for you sometimes. But having everybody be on the same page now, you've heard the players talk about how much better it is that these players are able to, go much more off of instinct and go off of feel, and they know so much more in the system than they did in many previous years for Texas football defense, where they haven't been able to keep the same coaches and they've been thrown on the bus. And I'll give Sark, if you don't want to give him credit for many other things, the fact that he's been loyal to PK and kept a same coaching staff kind of intact for 3 seasons, where some others may have thrown somebody under the bus, that is helping this defense exponentially as you get into year 3. And one of the other parts that is helping with is the physicality they're starting to be able to play with, that you're starting to work on smaller things that you may not be able to focus on at this part of camp. If you're still trying to install a defense, if you're still trying to install a lot of pieces to a lot of these players, you can't work on things and clean up tackling, for instance. And something that will drive every fan, every coach, every player crazy, if it's not you making the tackle, is poor tackling. And Sark has talked a few times in this offseason about the injuries going through camp and getting through practices and scrimmages, that the injuries have been pretty nice because they've been a little bit more physical, because he feels he has the depth to risk it. But I feel the technique is getting better at some of these tackles. So you may not have all that luck once you get in the game. Of course, we'd hope we would, but you may not. But if we look at the tackling as a microcosm of the defense as a whole being able to fix each and every one of their flaws, here's Sark talking about what the tackling is starting to look like at this scrimmage.
I've been impressed with the tackling. Sometimes you even think about the younger guys you'd be a little concerned with, just because the speed of it and the size of it. But like Manny Muhammad's had 2 good scrimmages from a tackling perspective, which when we recruited him, I don't know if we thought that was going to be one of his strengths. We knew we were getting a long cover corner who did that. Leon Lafau had a great, tackle force fumble Saturday. So the young guys there too. But I do think Jalen Catalon, I want to give him some credit, because I think he's brought an attitude about him, a physicality about him, and an intensity about him to go along with kind of what Bug brings, that I think has set a tone of, we want to be a knockback tackling defense. We want to populate the football. We want to get the ball off of people and create more turnovers. And in turn, I think we've tackled well. Now, we tackled more early in training camp than we have historically. And, that's why I credit the fact that we're healthy the way that we are, and we probably had a more physical training camp, I think has been impressive. So I feel comfortable, but we're not perfect yet. And, we had some opportunities, which I showed the team this morning, where we have to apply the drill work that we do early in practice when we work on tackling. You guys have seen some of that when you're there early in practice. We have to apply those drills in game, right? And when it's a sideline tackle, when it's a 2-on-1 vice tackle, when it's a cut tackle opportunity, we have to apply those things. And I think we missed some of those Saturday, and so that's something that we definitely can improve upon.
So that's where you get into talking about the early parts of your drills to get people's minds. You can actually work on the small parts of your practices. You can expound on them because you are not so focused on everyone being in the wrong place at all the time. You can focus on this defense now, as opposed to having to worry about pre-snap penalties and not having the right guys on the field. You're starting to be able to worry about little bit smaller things, like can you have guys tackling, form tackling, getting things done correctly. And that's not just form tackling, but it's the burst off of the line when you're edge rushing. It's about where you're dropping back in coverage and bumping and running, and just everything you can kind of do on defense. All the little drills, all those pieces getting worked on more and more because the defense is more comfortable. To have a leader like Jaylan Ford, to have a leader like Jalen Catalon now on this team, to have some leaders on this defensive end that are going to be able to push this defense to be better while keeping them in line and keeping them in the place they need to be is going to be huge. Now you just have to have some of these other, he mentions there, Muhammad, that he's stepping up and doing a little bit better. You're going to need some of these younger guys to step up. And Sark was asked yesterday about weak side linebackers. Say you lose some guys, you have to bring in some new people. How did he feel about the weak side linebackers at Texas? Here's Sark.
Yeah, David, he's very intentional with his approach to what he does. He's had a really good offseason, winter, spring ball, summer. He's such an intense human that everything he does is full speed. He goes, and sometimes we almost want him to tempo it a little bit, right? But so that he definitely brings that level of intensity and energy to the game. Mo, obviously a very versatile guy, and the fact that with a safety background, he has the ability to cover. He has the ability. I think he's a good blitzer. He's a violent player. When he goes, and he's violent at the point of contact. So definitely positives there. I think from Anthony's perspective, what he doesn't know, he kind of makes up for with instincts. He definitely has good instincts for the game. He might not be right, but gets his hand on a ball. It might not be the exact rush we're trying to get, but he finds his way to get to the quarterback. And so his instincts kick in. So everybody's got strengths. Everybody's got things that we're going to continue to work on. But I envision, at some way, shape, or form, all those guys will be on the field for us.
That's where we get into the depth of some of these positions and Anthony Barr and seeing if he's David Benda, seeing if they're going to be able to play at the highest level and where their skill set's going to be. You're going to need everyone to perform at some very high levels week 2. You're going to need to perform pretty much the entire Big 12 schedule. You're going to need guys to perform at a high level because we know a defense is only as strong as its weakest link in many points. And if they find a way through the middle of the defensive line and they find it over and over and over again, you can try and help over there, but your defensive line is going to have to step up. Texas is now getting into the point of depth, though, that there's starting to be more and more players who are finding playing time, and to say you don't necessarily have to keep somebody on the field as much if they're becoming an issue on this defense. And that's where the defense can really take that next step is when can you start to get your lineup of if somebody underperforms, you do not have a problem pulling them out. Sark has had a problem with multiple players saying they're clearly more talented. They're the higher star recruit. They're the guy who's going to play in this game no matter what. Even if they're making mental mistakes, even if they're allowing and they're the weakest link, they're going to stay out there because they're just having a bad game, and I think they'll turn it around. You're starting to get depth now that may not be as big of an issue for Texas this season on defense that, barring injury, you're going to have several linebackers who can rotate in and out. And if one's not having a great game or, the skill set of the players they're playing against doesn't favor them, they're going to be able to find a place you'll be able to find the next guy to step up and get in that line. Sark also talked about players that would earn playing time and who was somebody that stood out and may get a spot that we weren't expecting to be on this depth chart or in the 2 deep really at all. Here's who Sark said maybe some guys that could step up and play some actual minutes this season that we may not have been expecting.
I think a guy that's been impressive, Jelani McDonald is a kid who sometimes those kids that come in the summer, you get so consumed with the mid-years, and then these guys that show up in the summer, you don't really know. And you don't know in July because we're just doing skill development. He's a physical player, and he's got a high football IQ. So he's a guy that definitely kind of stands out to me, right off the bat. And I think Ryan Niblett's another guy, just 2 guys that came in the summer to me that as I'm watching them now, these guys are going to be good players for us. Is it going to be week 1? I don't know yet, but I've been just pleased with the work that they've put in.
That's going to be a key for everyone on this bench right now, for the freshmen, for the sophomores, whoever's not starting when this depth chart, which he said yesterday that the depth chart will probably be at least released to the team by the end of the week. So they can kind of get into the number one, who are the real number ones, who are the real number twos, who's in the rotation. That should be released by the end of the week. It could change after the scrimmage. Who knows? But if you get to that lineup, that's where you want to see the players that once you get that depth chart, and you don't know where you're at right now, but you say you're 3, you need to be playing like you're trying to get to that number 1 spot. We know Rob Babers talked about it all the time when he was playing there, and it was still DBU, and they still had a lineup of DBs. They would sometimes switch them just to make them work that much harder. That's what Texas defense is going to need this year because there are going to be different fronts you face and different offensive game plans throughout this season, and you may not be the right one for it. You may not have the starter may not be the best player for that defense, And if you're behind him and you're working hard enough, you may get in and, if you play as well as the starter did, you may keep that job. And that's what Texas needs, is they need to have that level of depth that we see at these major programs. If you want to start competing with the Georgias and Alabamas, that's what those guys can do. Is every year you hear the story of a guy who is a starter, but not a preseason All-American, but just a starter, and someone that comes up behind him is a year ahead of schedule. That's what Texas needs to see a lot of, because there are still some places on this defense that there's question marks. There's some question marks in the defensive back room. There's a lot of talent in that defensive back room, but there's still some questions. If they're going to be able to go up against the best wide receivers in the country and some of the best game planners in the country and really shut them down and allow you to have a little bit more help on the run game in the Big 12, are the defenders going to be able to play man and are they going to be able to be stuck on an island? And if someone's not, is there someone behind him waiting to take his job, or at least go out there and push him to be even better? Can they continue to push each other to be the best players they can be at Texas? That's what you want to see. Another position that we're hearing good reports from, we're hearing a lot of good reports, but is needed to improve. The last 2 years it has improved each year. It needs to improve once again, is the edge. Your edge rusher is a very important part in anyone's game planning today for football. So you're going to need your edge rushers to step up. One of those players who stepped up for the Texas Longhorns is Ethan Burke. And here's Sark talking about Ethan Burke and his progress.
What does Ethan Burke do best, and how much have you seen him work?
Blue collar, man. He's a blue collar guy. I think he has great length. He's got length, but at the end of the day, the guy's a mechanic, man. He goes to work. He rolls his sleeves up. He doesn't mind getting grimy. He's always going to try to find an edge somewhere. And he's got good wits about him. He knows how to play the game. And so obviously coming from a great program at Westlake, I think he was taught, really well coming out of high school. You see it with Vosick as well. But Ethan, just being a year advanced in the system, I think he knows how to really just play the game, but he definitely has a toughness, a griminess about him that we appreciate.
First of all, I've never associated blue collar and Westlake together, but props to Ethan Burke for having a coach say blue collar and Westlake together. I know they put work into the thing. I'm just taking a shot. I'm a Westwood guy, so I had to take a shot. But Ethan Burke stepping up, he needs to play at a higher level, and Vosick needs to come up behind him and push him, because you need to have an edge rusher. And you know what? If you're going to have to switch out and rotate them a bit more so that you're fresher than that left tackle and that right tackle, and you're fresher than whatever running back is trying to pass pro or tight end or whoever's trying to get in your way, if you need to get in there and rotate the guys, you need to have a pass rush that is starting to get on people, because it is going to change the field position. And for an offense that we're still have questions about how often they're going to be able to pick up first downs, if Sark is going to continue to take third down. And once we get to third and fourth quarters, that defense, if you're able to put them behind the chains and make them slow the game down for you to where you can get into these games a little bit better and let your offense rest a little bit more, let your defense get out there and really feel the momentum switch when the offense is trying to make a big play and they maybe scored a touchdown on you and you get that pass rush and all of a sudden the momentum swings back in your favor, those plays are huge. And that comes from edge rushing as much as it comes from anywhere else. So you want to see those guys improve. Also, Sark talked about the depth of this team now and what it allows players to do in finding the specific roles for each player, where you may not be number one on the depth chart, but you can still find a major role in this team. Here's Sark talking about some depth and roles.
Yeah, I mean, it is. That's the whole key to this whole thing, is that, you can rotate players. You can, if a player gets injured, the guy that goes in to replace him is more than qualified to do the job, and that his teammates can count on him, that he's going to do it right. But I think it goes beyond talent. I think there has to be a mindset too. I think that's dangerous when you just rely on talent to bail you out. And I think that's something this team is really starting to embody. There's a work ethic about them. There's a style of play about them. There's a level of intensity about them that make our practices very competitive and tough and hard. And in turn, when you don't operate that way, it shows pretty dramatically. And the players will be quick to let you know. And I appreciate that, because they want to be great. They want to have a great football team. And they know they need everybody. You know, it doesn't matter. When we sit in a team room, as I talk to our players, everybody's got a role on our team. And, you know, I get it. There's the Quinn Ewers, Xavier Worthies, you know, of the world, the Jaylan Fords of the world. But on that same note, there's that other guy who is getting him ready to play every week on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and how valuable he is to give the really good look to push them to be the best that they can be day in and day out. And I do think our team has a great deal of respect for one another that way, that everybody has a role on our team that's going to contribute to our success. And when you can understand your role and everybody can appreciate your role, and then you can do maximum effort in your role, man, that's when you have something pretty special. And so I would say the majority of our team really understands that aspect.
That's something that Sark has preached a ton. This coaching staff has preached a ton to their players, and you hear it in every player interview, that is the line, that everybody is going to be a very crucial part of this team. And as long as you find your role and you do your role, you'll be a crucial part. And that is great. But I will tell you again that some of these players need to understand that even though football is a team sport, you need to have some ego of your own in there. And to be great, you have to want to be great and not just fit into your role in all places. Now, if you're third string, you probably shouldn't be trying to rock the boat a whole bunch. And you want to work your butt off. You want to get out there and do everything you can do, right? But you don't need to be out there saying, I need to be the starter. But if you are a starting running back and your opportunities are coming at a premium because maybe the ball is being thrown downfield more than being handed off, you need to really show what you're going to put that effort forward every time you go out there. You need to put that extra effort that I will be the great running back that I can be. If you are the wide receiver and you go run those routes, you need to be able to run routes and pass block and do everything else that even if you're not going to get those calls on that play, when you go into that film room, everyone knows. Every coach knows, every player knows watching it. Man, that guy's killing it right now, and that guy needs to get a little bit more love. If you're an A.D. Mitchell and you want to be the wide receiver and you know Xavier Worthy's on the other side and they're going to show him all the attention, especially early in the season, you need to go out there and be great, be elite. If you're Jonathan Brooks, you need to go out there early in the season and show them on film that you can be elite. You need to be that player. So I'm all for have your role and know it. But sometimes you need to step up. And if your role is not considered to be the best player, you should always try and be the best player. Finally, the secret weapon of the Longhorns this year, what really needs to be going for this team to be playing on all cylinders. And it's not just punting and kicking, but it is the special teams, because it is how you continue to flip a field. And we know in third and fourth quarters, you're going to need every inch to hold some of these leads if Sark does not fix all of his play calling proclivities. Here's Sark on the depth in special teams now.
You know, it does. It does. And I think that's, you know, where Coach Banks does a great job of, you know, a lot of times early on in camp, as we go, we're learning the players. And, you know, Jaylan Ford, we know, is a really good guy on kickoff coverage, like Demo and those guys were a year ago. But sometimes you put a guy behind him that, man, this guy's going to be a player. So he can learn from that. And all of a sudden, Jaylan can come off and that next guy stepping in can be that type of player. And so sometimes you try to back those guys up, your frontline starter guys, with guys that you know are gonna grow into that role.
That's one thing that the Longhorns have that not a ton of teams have. Some great teams do, but not every team has, is the ability to really build your players on special teams because your veterans are buying into it. Because the Keelan Robinsons and Jaylan Fords and DeMarvion Overshawn's bought into it, and Roschon bought into it, and guys that are in the NFL now bought into the special teams, and they played at a high level there, and it helped their play elsewhere, that you're able to show that to the younger players who are getting some playing time because they now see the path to being the starter and the Longhorns is through special teams for a lot of guys. It's a great look for a building of a dynasty of a team is what you want to build, to be able to build that special teams. and get them to the next level. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little MLB. We'll talk about the Longhorns in the NFL. It's a topic that E and Rob B were talking about yesterday. And we'll keep taking your text, 512-337-3776, 512-337-3776, talking about running backs in the NFL, talking about Texas football defense. You can text us in your thoughts. 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line. And we'll be right back here on the Sports Complex in the Horn, 101.9 AM 1260 on the Horn app and hornfm.com. Patrick Davis here. I want to talk to you about the best Longhorn apparel you can find, and you can find it at the University of Texas Co-op. The season is coming up. You need to get your clothing sorted out, what you're going to wear to the games. It's going to be hot when they play Rice, so you got to get ready. The 40 Acres Collections offers exclusive and custom design apparel for the whole family. Limited edition, on-trend, fashion performance, luxury apparel. It's wicking, SPF 50, and easy care. And it's gear that gives back. 40 Acres has made a financial commitment to the University of Texas Co-op course material scholarship, giving free course materials to Longhorn students. Every penny of profit from the co-op goes directly to course material scholarships, and the co-op thanks 40 Acres for expanding scholarships this academic year. So if you need to get your clothes picked out, you need a new shirt, I've got one now, and it's awesome. It looks cool. I've already got compliments on it, and it breathes, and it's great, and I enjoy it a lot. And you should get one too, because it's going to make you stand out at your tailgates, at the game, and you're going to be happy with it. So come on by the University of Texas Co-op and get geared up with the new 2024 collection. I've seen some of the shirts. They're really cool. 40 Acres Apparel. Joe, check it out at the University of Co-op now. Back on the Sports Complex in the Horn, playing our songs about waiting all week long, just waiting for college football, waiting for the NFL, just waiting. It feels like it's been forever, but it's almost here. We did rain dances last week, and we got rain today. It wasn't a lot, but maybe they'll play. Maybe we'll get a Friday night game. Are they going to throw it in? We got Vandergrift on Friday night here on the Horn. Got some high school football for you. So we'll get that for you. Let's get some MLB news. Remember, you can join the conversation, 512-337-3776. Join the conversation there. We'll read some of the text. I know, Chan, I got you. I'm going to respond to you here in a little bit. MLB news, though. We didn't mention this over the weekend, but on Monday, Jose Altuve did join the 2,000 hit club this weekend, which is awesome. It's a very cool thing, and it's not impossible. He will move further up on this list. But it is one of those things when you hear it and you're like, yeah, man. So that's elite company, and it's rare company. But I won't say it's elite because he's now 289th all-time in hits, but a big achievement for Jose Altuve. I know some people still hold out grudges. He wasn't Cheeseman. They've gone through and done the studies and listened to everything. I know you want to believe that there was a buzzer, but there wasn't. There's no proof of this. It's all made up lies. The Astros cheated. The Astros 100% cheated. That's all proven. That they did that. Altuve was one that didn't appreciate it as much. But the Astros and the Mariners win last night. Rangers lost their 5th straight. Gonna have to turn the ship up. But they're gonna have some problems today. They're pitching John Gray, who's pretty good on the road, 5-2. They played a bullpen game against the Diamondbacks. Thought that would be an easier win for them last night. Didn't matter. Diamondbacks get the win. Zach Gallen pitching tonight for the Diamondbacks. He is 10-1 at home with a 1.2 ERA. 1.82 ERA at home for the Diamondbacks. Zach Gallen is. So a big game for the Rangers tonight. Pregame, 8 o'clock right here on the Horn. Check that out. And for the Astros tonight, Justin Verlander is playing. He will be the starting pitcher for the Astros tonight against the Red Sox. Again, a big series against the Red Sox. The Astros are now a game and a half back from the Rangers for first place in the AL West. The Mariners are 2 games back from the Rangers, so a half game back from the Astros, which means they're a half game back from the Astros in the wild card, and the Red Sox, after a loss last night, are 2 games back from the Astros in the wild card. Everyone is right there. It is getting to be that part of the season where things are getting a little bit more intense, and you're seeing more games come out, and couldn't have been a worse time for Yordan Alvarez to have a dumb injury. Apparently jammed his finger in a door today, scratched from the lineup. I believe they're going with soreness. I believe soreness is what they're saying, but he has been scratched by the lineup, which means Yanier Diaz will come to that DH position. Verlander is one of those guys. He has 2 players that he likes to have with him. He likes to have a guy in front of him and a guy behind him at all times. Mauricio Dubon is pretty much the center fielder for Verlander. He likes Dubon behind him, and he likes to have Maldonado on the plate. So that means John Singleton is going to be playing first base. I would have put Yanier Diaz at first base. He will be the DH filling in for Yordan Alvarez. The young guys came back. They had that players-only meeting the Astros did after getting swept by the Mariners. And really they showed the young players, like, these guys got to have more energy. Some of these older players don't seem like they're getting up for it enough. But Chas McCormick, Jake Myers, Yanier Diaz, Yordan Alvarez, of course, those guys have been playing really, when they play together, the Astros have a really good record. So look out for all that. And another thing to watch for tonight, if you are a Yankees hater like I am, the Yankees look to snap their 8-game losing streak tonight against the Nationals. It's the longest active streak in MLB. And they haven't lost 9 straight games since 1982. That is crazy. And that was a first season of a 13-year postseason drought, their longest in the last century. That is crazy for the Yankees. They could go and lose a 9-game losing streak against the Nationals, could continue tonight. Something to watch for with the Yankees. Want to get to something from me and Rob B. We told you we were going to play it yesterday, so we're going to play it today. They had a really good conversation about the Longhorns in the NFL. And if you want to talk about what is going to help this Longhorn program continue, even if Sark doesn't work out, but how you got to keep your name in the public knowledge. And yes, I know Horns Down is everywhere, so we're always going to be there, but you have to keep players in the NFL, players for the Longhorns in the NFL doing well, lots of them around. Here's Ian Robbie talking about Longhorns in the NFL.
You know what the number is for number of Texas players on NFL rosters right now, former Longhorns who are trying to make NFL rosters?
Oh, that's good. I do not know that.
TY, do you have a guess? Number of players in camp right now?
24.
41.
I was going to say it's definitely higher than
41 former Longhorns.
That's good.
And some of the best performances of the weekend. Well, the worst on a good, bad, and ugly Monday is DeMarvion Overshown is out for the year.
Yeah, torn ACL.
Such a shame.
Brutal.
Routine play. Foot got caught in the turf as he turned, and you kind of could tell from he went off in a cart. Or once he got to the sidelines, he walked off under his own power. But then they put him in the cart, took him to the locker room.
It's a great opportunity to sit back and learn and watch and see what a year in the NFL is
better
like,
to play.
I know, but just taking a positive out of it.
No, you're right.
A lot of mental reps.
That's a glass half full.
Also,
like
the Moro Ojimo injury that we saw, he left on a cart, immobilized on Thursday night. He's doing much better by all accounts from the Philadelphia Eagles. It's no longer been called a neck injury; they're calling it a concussion for Moro Ojimo, head injury.
Yeah, very
still
serious.
Scary.
Yeah, still scary, but at least now it seems like he's going to just be put in concussion protocol. It looks like he'll be okay. Yes,
and monitored.
Yeah.
He got hit in the side of the head.
Yeah, the NFL this preseason week bad for the league. You had guys getting carted off, different reasons.
New England canceled their game with the Packers.
Yeah, that's the image the NFL does not want to really project about football. They're trying to stay away from that, considering last year you had the DeMar Hamlin thing.
Yeah.
You had Tua going down. Oh, Tua has learned how to fall.
I saw him.
Did you see him?
In the Houston game. He's better at falling.
He tucked his chin.
Yes.
So he learned it from jiu-jitsu or whatever. Yeah, he tucked his chin.
Fall
he learned.
class.
There you go, man. It works.
Tua looked good, by the way. He threw a terrible interception on the
Early
first play
on,
against the Texans, and the Texans didn't even score. They didn't score
Don't
from
remind
the
me.
7-yard line. But we'll get to the Texans coming up because C.J. Stroud, I thought, looked much, much better. I think you saw some glimpses of why C.J. Stroud was the second pick in the draft on Saturday against the Dolphins. So as far as the 41 Longhorns, Colt McCoy got the starting nod for the Cardinals against Kansas City. He's very likely to be the starting quarterback for them when the season begins because Kyler Murray's not ready.
And he's not going to be ready for a while.
So Colt McCoy, it's a tough spot for him because it reminds you of when Colt was in like Cleveland. They're just not very good.
Mm-hmm.
And they're rebuilding. They're trying to play for draft picks, and Colt's going to get the start.
Yeah, but
But DeAndre Hopkins is gone.
Yeah.
It's
going to be it's going to be stressful starts.
And it's in a very good division with the 49ers, the
Seahawks are good.
Rams, and Aaron Donald. I feel for Colt, but he went 5 for 8.
Colt's tough.
He's
tough. He's tough.
Well, you've seen him on bad teams before. It's just you're trying.
He's
but
played for the Browns. He's good.
It was like watching Sam Ellinger last year.
He started for the Browns.
Well, I think the Cardinals this year could resemble the Browns. You know what I'm saying?
You're right because
bad ownership.
All the projections are they going to have the number 1 and top 2 picks
because they have the Texans pick for next year too.
The lines came out for gambling for every single game this year, and they're not favored in one single game.
In not one game?
Nope.
Oh.
Just to start the year, that changes.
Is that the case for any other team in the league, though?
No, they're the only team.
Wow.
How about speaking of
that's a nice factoid right there.
Sam Ellinger led the Colts on 2 touchdown drives. They've already named Anthony Richardson their starter, but he's in competition with Gardner Minshew. He'll be on this roster. Can we hear a touchdown run from Sam Ellinger? He led them on 2 touchdown drives in a 4-minute span, including this typical Bam Bam Sam run.
Last year, a guy that was a 4-year really special teamer for the Colts. Ellinger. There's a pass. There's a touchdown.
Mr. August, here he is again. 4th quarter comeback, Sam Ellinger. I'll tell you what. But, getting back to that interview,
there you go. Mr. August, they're calling.
He already got a nickname? Basically, in the preseason, he just rigged shop in the preseason.
That's the only time he gets to play.
He did get a couple of stars.
I feel bad for Sam, too, because remember last year,
he was Saturday, Jeff Saturday?
Yeah, he was in the middle of that tornado where the owner took over.
And then Jeff Saturday
is the coach, fired.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden fired the offensive coordinator and put Sam in at quarterback to face like Bill Belichick.
Apparently he liked Sam.
I would say he's a big Sam guy.
Yeah, he's a big Sam fan, but he didn't do him any favors.
Yeah. Hey, fire my head coach Frank Reich, fire my offensive coordinator, and then put me up against Belichick with Jeff Saturday coaching.
Sounds about right. But I will say now that they have, because Anthony Richardson, he's going to be the starter there, and is it Shane Steichen, the head coach now? They can have like running game plans for their quarterbacks now, and you can have more kind of synchronicity because Sam can also do similar things. He's not Anthony Richardson by any stretch, but you can still use the quarterback running game, which is what they want to do.
Playbook, yeah.
And he came from the Philadelphia Eagles where they love the quarterback running game.
Jalen Hurts, Bijan Robinson, 8th overall pick in the 2023 draft, had 4 carries for 20 yards and a 6-yard reception. his first carry was Bijan Like, Rod. He made a safety.
It was nice.
It was
I
so
saw
ridiculous.
He had no business getting, like, what did he end up getting, like 10, 11 yards on the first carry?
11 yards after what should have been contact. But
it should have been like a 4-yard gain for any other normal human.
He was like parallel with the ground.
Yeah,
running.
yes.
Like,
Exactly.
when he does, that's
like,
crazy.
What? No Longhorn fan was shy. We're like, told y'all.
Told y'all.
You
won't be able to do that in the NFL. What? Shoot. Well, now these are guys trying to make teams. I get it.
Yeah, still.
Also, one more highlight. Can we hear Joseph Osai with the Cincinnati Bengals? Osai, remember his season ended with that late hit penalty?
Oh,
late hit out of bounds. Oh, Joe, you hate that.
That was brutal.
And it looked like he got hurt on that play, but he's balling out. Let's hear Joseph Osai had himself an interception.
In motion. Ritter to Miller. That one's deflected up in the air. Picked off.
There it is, Joe Osai.
Intercepted by Joseph Osai.
I mean, I love that. The defensive coordinator for Cincinnati too, Lou Anarumo.
He was up for the finals for the Cardinals job, and
yeah, he must be a bad interviewer or something. I don't know.
I think he's just an older guy.
He's an old guy.
He just doesn't really care that much.
I think it's gonna be like a Vic Fangio,
but he's very good.
That's kind of that's what I felt.
That's a good point. Yeah, because maybe he doesn't care that much about being a head coach.
Maybe he does, but as an organization, do you want to hire?
Well, he finally got noticed because the Bengals won the Super Bowl the previous year. They beat Patrick Mahomes.
His game plans versus Mahomes is what got people looking at him.
Well, remember when Josh Allen and the Bills, the Bills couldn't stop Patrick Mahomes. Then on their way to the Super Bowl, the Bengals had to beat Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, and they did the best job of anybody on him.
Yep, nobody's done really that Tampa Bay game plan in the Super Bowl, and then Lou Anarumo's game plans with Cincinnati have pretty much been the most effective to neutralize or somewhat neutralize Patrick Mahomes. But man, it's only so much you can do.
Hey, there you go. There's some of the NFL. 41 Longhorns looking to make their way. Sam Ehlinger. I did mention Shane Buechele. Shane Buechele in behind Patrick Mahomes.
Buechele
went 10 for 10 with 105 yards of passing and a touchdown run of 14 yards for the Chiefs. I know he didn't finish at Texas, but he's a lifetime Longhorn and playing well.
More of those Longhorn quarterbacks just in the NFL.
Yeah,
I like it.
I like it.
It's good, man.
41 Longhorns in the NFL. We know Jim Harbaugh seems to think he's going to have like another a dozen drafted this year of Michigan Wolverines in there. So the Longhorns got to keep providing more. We're hoping Quinn Ewers is a first-round draft pick, or J.T. Sanders and Xavier Worthy. You want all those guys to get drafted. And the higher you get them drafted, the better. But that is going to be a big piece of Texas going forward. We're going to take our last break. We come back. Respond to your text, 512-337-3776. We can respond to your text there if you got anything you want to say to us before we get off the air. And this last call will tell you some things to go check out around town. And you know what? I'll try and put in this sound from Pete Carroll as well. We come back here on the Horn, wrap things up. Horn, 1019 AM 1260, hornfm.com, and the Horn app. Last call here on the Sports Complex. Getting you all wrapped up, ready for the evening. Couple things to wrap up before we get out of here. I want to respond to Chan, the man Chan, on the Specs text line. He says, running game needs to work to help our quarterback. Coach Steven needs to morph in the second half with adjustments. And how's the defense going to be without Coach Patterson? I agree. The running game does need to help out the quarterback, and Sark needs to call the plays for the running backs to be able to help out the quarterback and pull that defensive line and linebackers and everybody in a little bit more, opening up some space to do that mid-range passing we talked about yesterday. And the second half adjustments, yeah, he knows. He talked about it this season that he needs to make in-game adjustments. Now the question is, does he make those adjustments, or does he just continue to have the same issues he had last year and continue to think that he is smarter than what he actually is in those second half adjustments? He knows what he's doing, but he just never makes the adjustments at the right time. And sometimes he makes adjustments that aren't necessary, where the play works a couple times, and in the third and fourth quarter, he doesn't go back to that play anymore. It's just a run play. Just run it, or this screen, or whatever it is. You can keep doing it until they stop it. Keep doing it. And sometimes he gets ahead of himself and doesn't want to do that. And how's the defense going to be without Coach Patterson? I'm not 100% sure they'll be without Coach Patterson, but I think they'll be okay. 1 year of help did help a lot. Having another year in the system is going to help these players out a ton. So I that's not my biggest worry. I would love to have Patterson back. The big one now is Paul Chryst helping out this offense, helping the run game for Texas, and helping Coach Sark some on the importance of running the ball. Paul Chryst addition this year, I think, is going to be helpful for the Texas Longhorns in Sark's education going forward, as much as I believe Patterson's was for PK, learning about more of how the Big 12 defenses work. You got one more year with it, but I think that will help out. That his lessons to PK are going to be big. Couple of things to check out. Astros are on TBS tonight. It's a Verlander game, so they get to get the TV against the Red Sox. You get a Northeast team, and you get and Verlander. You get a game on TBS tonight. So if you are an Astros fan without a way to watch the Astros normally, you can check them out on TBS tonight. If you want to go check out some music, how about Bear Ryan playing at Saxon Pub tonight? You can check that out. Some good Americana music for you. And if you want to laugh, something that they do every year here in Austin. It's a cool thing. A lot of good comedians have come out of it. The Funniest Person in Austin contest is going on. It's every Tuesday. They're doing it right now. I believe they're still in the early rounds or the first round. So you'll see some terrible comics, people who have never even really tried stand-up comedy and just eating it on stage. And you will see some people that are seriously funny comedians advancing as well. That's happening tonight at Cap City Comedy Club. So another thing for you to check out there. We appreciate everybody who chimed in today for our big fat poll of the day, of which running back you'd want to have, you would pay the most for, that is going to be a free agent next year. We appreciate everybody who chimed in there. Rangers coming up at 8 o'clock tonight right here on the Horn. You can check out the pregame at 8 o'clock. The game is at 8:40. We will have that for you. We will have more Sports Complex for you tomorrow. I believe Jerry Jones was speaking to the media. If I can find some audio of Jerry Jones, love to play some Jerry Jones audio. We like our guys. Try and work on that Jerry Jones impression. I don't think it's there yet. But we'll get there. Getting one day closer to college football coming this weekend. Can't wait for it. Appreciate everybody joining the conversation. We will be back tomorrow with more Sports Complex. Until then, be kind to others. Keep yourself clean, keep yourself safe, and keep your underwear clean. We'll see you tomorrow right here on the Sports Complex on the Horn.